Hello, hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone watching. Thank you all for joining in. We're sorry we're a bit late. It's fashionable these days. I
We're
hope
not
you
late.
don't
We're
mind.
just on time. Good morning to all, whatever it is. Hello.
Today with us, we have a very special guest who is going to introduce herself today, even though I think most people in the comments will know her already. Hi, Meri. Thank you for saying yes to us today.
Hello, Aditya. Hello, Darko. Thanks for having me. Wow, what a topic today, right? It's a very trending one nowadays, but it has been for the past 20, 30 years. So I'm Meri Maroutian. I'm Armenian. I'm teaching English in Italy. I'm a second English as a second language teacher. And you might know me for, I call myself the non-native speaker. So I've become an equity advocate for all non-native English speaking teachers, not because I want to further people apart, but basically because I want teachers to be recognized for their qualifications and not for why they were born, where they were born, and what was the first language they've learned since they were children. So that's basically what I do. So I do conferencing on an international level, and I speak about native speakerism.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I was just checking on LinkedIn who our LinkedIn user is. It's Peter Fullagar. Hi, Peter. Thank you so much for joining. And Alexandra from Germany. So the LinkedIn user and Alexandra. Good morning. Oh, we have
Morning, Wilson.
more people. Good morning, Wilson. Thank you all for joining. This is an interactive show, so please pitch in with your comments and questions. We'll try to give a voice to all of you.
I already have a first question. Mary, you said a very interesting word for me, which is speakerism. What is it about?
Yeah, native speakerism. Basically, it is an ideology. It's this perpetuated belief that native speakers are better than non-native speakers. And normally, we can say this for everyone, but especially like I hone in about language teachers there. So it is basically an ideology for which certain voices or certain voices or certain people are favored over non-natives, basically, because it is perceived that if you come from an English-speaking country, then you are much better and at your work, at your job. And often native speakers are not required to show qualifications or show certification for who they are, what they know, their know-how, and they come like from a privileged background, basically, because everyone kind of considers them apt for the job, good at the job that they are wanting to take sometimes. And that is totally okay, in my opinion, in a sense that if I were given this privilege, I would gladly take it. Why wouldn't I? But because that's why I'm saying I'm not against native speakers. Of course, native speakers can also be English language teachers. But the requirements for native speakers versus non-native speakers are in disparity. So where a non-native speaking teacher would have to show proficiency levels, qualifications, degrees, and often be called for an interview to then show the people or the recruiters how they speak English, if their voice conforms to the standardized forms of English and whatnot, a native speaker can simply tick a box, not go through all those formal assessments, which are quite costly as well, and just be seen as the right model and also be paid more than the non-native speaker teacher who has gone through all the obstacle course and gained all this expertise. Yeah.
I'm sure the people in the comments have some experience with this. So if you'd like to share something, please do.
Yes. I can tell you that when I started, speaking of privilege, because I don't want to sound like I'm the one here, being the person telling people how to act and what privilege to take advantage of and whatnot. I took full advantage of my own privilege when I was called over a phone call, and then someone just from a language school said, "Would you come and teach for our school?" And I had no concept of what English language teaching even was. I spoke English, but I didn't ever train to become a teacher. So they were just happy to, with the onboarding process over the phone, telling me, why don't you come and work for us? And I kept saying, like, but I'm not a teacher. I would love that kind of a job. Obviously, this beats anything I've done so far. I'm 23 years old. I'd love that, but I'm not qualified and I don't know how to do this. And they didn't care. And so I took advantage of that privilege, but then I sought formal training because I liked the job. And I had this belief that by educating myself on the topic, becoming an actual teacher, that would lead me to better career opportunities. But it wasn't so. I'm still judged by how well I speak English, just from like an untrained ear perspective. And people will just say, oh, I want to learn from you because you're a native speaker. And I will continuously say, no, I'm not. And I want to, I call myself the non-native speaker for this reason, because I want people to really understand that it's not about that. I understand it's not a good selling point because people are not aware of the differences, but I want to start the conversation with that and saying, I'm not a native speaker and you are not, and we are doing totally fine without being natives, And then there's also this broad terminology, like what makes a native speaker? What is it even? And we can define it as someone being born in a specific country where English is spoken as a first language or as an official language, but it's not so. It's very nuanced, the definition, because if you think about countries such as Malaysia, India, Singapore, South Africa, often they are not considered English speaking when they totally are. And so if I tell people I've studied in Malaysia, they will not put two and two together and say, oh, maybe you've studied English in Malaysia. But if I say I've lived in San Diego for 9 months, they will say, oh, that's where you've learned. So it's like the proximity to a native speaker is what made me who I am today, and not all the education, or all the practice and all the volunteer work I did as an English language teacher and investment in myself, that's what made me proficient and who I am today. So other countries, for instance, they would say that the thing that makes a native speaker is someone who has gotten their secondary education or completed their secondary education in an English speaking context. So any 18-year-old who has, even not a native speaker or born in, let's say, London, if they go there, complete their education there, secondary education, they're the native speaker for Italy, for instance. So it's very nuanced, and I think it's like beneficial for some to play on these power dynamics that there can be between like who owns the language and who can be better at the language simply because of heritage, birthplace, first language, and all that. So it's quite a broad topic.
Definitely. And for people with mixed backgrounds and heritages who've traveled the world, it can be an even more complicated question, like, who am I? And how much of English belongs to me?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
We have a comment from Peter. Peter, your settings on LinkedIn are set to private to some degree. That's why we see you as a LinkedIn user. Peter says, Meri does such a fantastic job in highlighting this. Native speakers like me do need to realize our privilege, and it's a shame that many of us don't.
Thank you, Peter. If I could add to that, it's not only about recognizing it, which is great. It's a bit like the awareness issue, right? If you're aware, of something, it doesn't make it go away, because you, and I'm sure you do specifically, because I know you, we have interacted on social media, but most people just stop at that. Like, oh, I acknowledge my privilege, I'll take more of that. But it's not about that. It's about really finding the time and the opportunities. I'm not saying do what I do, and at every instance where something comes up, I'm like, hey, did you know about, I'm very energetic and positive about it. And I try to treat it as a topic of, I'm going to now tell you about this. Did you know? But sometimes people are like really frustrated, and it can create a lot of anxieties on this. So I understand whether or not you decide to talk on this, but there are specific opportunities where you cannot not say anything. And that's where I invite everyone to say something about the issue. And that would make you not just be aware of it, but you're actively doing something about it. And, as educators, as people in an industry where it's important that we can create lessons on this, you can debate on it, we can do so much with it. So why not just do that, not just stop at your awareness and then continue perpetuating this belief because it serves you or it serves the circumstance where you might be. Like, again, I'm the first one who I lied about my own identity at my first job because they told me, don't mention you're Armenian, just say you have origins from there, but you are not, in fact. And so I took advantage of that as well. I'm speaking from experience here.
I think it's also very important for our students, isn't it? Whether you're a native or non-native teacher, your students are going to face discrimination and be very self-conscious about their accents and their heritage.
Mm-hmm. And what they normally say is just that. They say, I want to sound like you, they say. And I'm like, why? You're Italian. Why would you want to sound like somebody else? You want to sound French? Do you want to sound Armenian? Do you want to sound, what do you want to sound like? You're not a spy, you're not an actor. So let's take that and just put it aside for a second.
We have an interesting comment. Darko, would you read this one? It's more than one line. It's for you.
Oh, I dodged the last one. I can't this one. Okay, it's a comment from Said. The criteria for a native speaker sometimes morphs into racism and marginalizes native speaker with colored skin.
Yes, that is absolutely true because it doesn't stop at your birthplace, and then it goes into what color you are, and then it goes into what you sound like. So oftentimes I also hear people who sound like the right part over a phone, or they sound like they have but then when people meet you and they see, oh, you're brown skinned or you're black or then it's not okay anymore. Or maybe they hire you just because of you're that one person that's going to be like the representation of that category, or so all of these things are really, you have to be very careful navigating into it. But I wouldn't even stop at that, because then there is auditory racism. So if someone has full on like all the qualifications but speaks with a foreign accent, foreign to whom is the question, then they get discriminated also. So it just doesn't stop. And then it's the key word here being the perception. And the market often like says this is because the client prefers, and it's a client preference, and it's the market that dictates these choices. But when we say that, we are trying to relieve ourselves of the responsibility for having anything to do with the discriminatory practices that are happening. So to blame a client who is maybe uninformed, going to if I wanted to learn guitar tomorrow, I'm not sure where to even start. What am I going to say? I want the late Jimi Hendrix's skills, so someone can. That's not even I can't even compare it, because then we don't have a specific teacher model in mind when we go into language school and I say, I want this person to teach me, right? We have no reference, no guide whatsoever. So you're saying that this client's preference, who has no clue as to how languages are learned, is going to guide the system. That's why I talk about defeating systemic bias, because then it's very comfortable and convenient to blame someone who has no knowledge whatsoever and pretend like we are not the ones putting the ads. We are not publicizing our language schools with our teachers are native speakers. So if you perpetuate this belief and you keep going on the same point and leveraging that same point of our teachers are native speakers, no wonder then your client wants a native speaker. So let's not blame our students for believing this to be true. Let's stop.
What happens with the ads that are white only or female only or pleasant looking only? I've seen all of those. And
they justify this also. I try to report these ads officially, and what they said was it's okay if they say native speaker only, even if it's in Europe, because they're not specifically discriminating against one group. So if they would say, for instance, only Armenian candidates are not allowed to send in their application, then that would be discrimination.
So if your discrimination is broad enough, you're fine.
Really report it. At least in Italy you can't, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so, there are these loopholes. They try to kind of make it into, like, yeah, we're aware of this, but it's not specified, so we can't do anything about it. So it's like protecting, the perpetrator. I'm reading.
All right. We have
quite
some...
a lot of comments today, and there were a lot of hellos and good mornings before. So hello and good morning
now
to
they're
all.
Right. They're right in it. Like, okay, let me say something here. I like where this is going.
Yes.
Darko, would you read some of the comments for us?
Some of the longer comments, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let's switch to the comments. Let me see where we left. Okay. The next one was from Wilson. I was born in Portuguese-speaking country and became fluent and proficient in the English language when I was 20 years old. When I went to live and study on South Africa for 5 years. Right now, I was able to develop an international accent, and when I speak with natives, they doubt my original origins because of my English level. It
They try to convince you you're not from where you say you're from, Wilson. You don't sound. And this is another thing, this compliment, this praise. I talk about it a lot on my Instagram social media account because, why are you complimenting me on my accent, and why do native speakers tend to validate our voices as if we need the validation? I specifically do not want any validation coming from a native speaker because it is tainted with their prejudice. They will say something like, "Oh, I love your accent," and that's another way of saying I understand you, and you have conformed enough to my own accent that I now can recognize you as almost an equal, but not really, because I still needed to validate you on that because you now sound more like me, or more like you have adopted an accent that will make me understand you better. So it's like, again, why don't you just erase your identity, erase your voice, erase anything that has to do with your background to accommodate my preference? And that's what we see happen in schools, in language schools, but in general, everybody. And what boggles my mind is that teachers actually believe this to be true. Like English language teachers, further down in their career, they still think this is because, they have a native speaker model will come and teach pronunciation to the classes. This is like in secondary education. There are these programs, right? 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week, someone will come into the class and be the pronunciation model and stand beside a fully qualified teacher who is not perceived to have the knowledge to speak the language in a way that people can imitate. Yes. And so again, is it the teacher's fault that this is actually in place? If the whole system tells you that you are not good enough and we need to get someone, a backpacker, not even a teacher, someone who speaks the language from XYZ country to come in here 20 years younger, 30 years younger than you, and everyone is going to see them as the resource in the classroom, and you are like, you kind of shrink. You keep shrinking, and then no wonder you don't even want to speak English outside of your language classroom or of your classrooms in general, because you are seen as this, oh, I can only teach grammar sort of thing because I know this, but I could never live up to that kind of, And so this is like the vicious circle that we're now in, and we can't seem to break the habit of challenging these myths. Because everyone around us is continuously saying what is not true.
Exactly. I think I missed 1 or 2 comments before. So Rina said before regarding what you said, that we need to educate students. We need to speak up and educate our students. And after that also about racism, that she can relate to that with Said. But we have an additional comment from Alexandra, and I think it's now turn for the Edita to read the comment.
What is with this sufferance? Oh, geez. Come on, you can do it.
How about a passport only? Alexandra says, I'm Ukrainian, have taught in 4 countries, and know I do a fantastic job. Unfortunately, I often can't get promoted higher than a coordinator just because I was told your passport is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Your passport is another way of saying your nationality, mostly. And yeah, it is another way of discriminating people because, again, your passport says what nationality you are, even though you might have a different citizenship. So much to say on that with the governmental practices of this. No, sometimes people from the UK complain that they have it just as hard. I'm going to take advantage of this to say that this uncomfortable thing. They say that they have the same problem, for not being recognized as the qualified teachers they are, because when they do have the qualifications, they still are seen as just native speakers. And they're right. But, I would love to be in that position, to be favored rather than judged, on something and not be hired. So I would love to be given a job still just because I'm perceived to be better, and then say, but I'm also qualified. I would love that. So not saying that it's not a relevant problem. I'm just saying this is not the first thing for, I'm sure a lot of native speakers are listening as well, and I want them to kind of think about this. I wish I was given a job and then I could maybe even educate on this and say, but it's not the same for non-native who are not given a job. Like they literally have to fight it so that they can even get a foot in the door. So we're not comparing the two things. And then there's this governmental practices that says, if you have XYZ passport or visa requirements, and then you can get into so and so. And Southeast Asia is full of people, full of language schools who are consistently looking for the right passport holders and giving them the jobs. And I'm not saying that this is not even something that we see in Europe, because we absolutely see it. And as much as, and I'm speaking about the UK residents, who are, have that right passport, it's not true that because you are outside of the European Union, you are not given. I like to disprove this, because as English language teaching, as far as English language teaching goes, and I'm not touching on any other fields or topics here, I hope that is clear, you're absolutely still given all the privilege and all the advantages of the case. Like no one is saying, oh, you are not part of the EU anymore, so I'm not. Like literally, every school in Italy is still looking up to the royal family. They're writing letters to the prince and the late queen, and they're still all for the double-decker buses and the cultural intertwining of the language with totally. It doesn't matter. You could be on Mars and this will still be perpetuated and still upheld. So I don't know what you guys are complaining about if you're a native speaker watching this, and happen to be obviously an English language teacher. It's not the case. You can test it out if you don't believe me. You can just say, oh, can I still come? And yes, the answer is yes, absolutely, you can. So I'm just saying that, Alexandra is totally right. Your passport might be the issue, but it's not like you have to go and change your passport. It's just the fact that we have to do something collectively. So this discriminatory practice really goes away entirely.
Absolutely. I can attest to that from my own example after Brexit, being in the UK, getting interviews for schools and then ending up opening my own business because it made zero sense.
Yes. And it's, as long as it's the law and the law that suits people, then it's totally, it's all about the law. But, segregation was once allowed and it was per law. So I feel like people hide behind laws too frequently. When we talk about, oh, as a teacher, you have to teach critical thinking and 21st century skills, how many people actually think critically themselves when they put themselves in a position to teach our students and your students to think critically? Let's start with that. Therefore, I'm like all about creating materials that really start to challenge the system and think critically about things that we accept as normality and the norm when they're absolutely not. And they are very current topics. Like, I don't know why we have to go 100 years back in history. But even if you wanted to do that, why wouldn't we talk about language and its the power dynamic of language, of the historical context of how languages are developing and how they are changing and how they're evolving when they are in the mouths of different, heritages and different parts of the world, and why we are still seeing it as something that we have to avoid rather than something that we need to learn to accommodate and accept as human beings. Why are we still living in the 19th century, so to speak, in a globalized world, as people say? Because I'm not the one who has researched this, or I'm the person who has learned from accessible materials, and they're online, they're everywhere. You can find free articles to read on this. And people just tend to get very lazy on this and take a stance, like sometimes even against me, the person who is just saying what they've read to be true. And I'm standing on the shoulders of giants who have spoken about this time and time and again, and more people still speaking about it and bringing this to light. And then I get attacked on a personal level for saying something that was researched, was found, was written about, was, you have to take into consideration other perspectives, even though sometimes it seems like the world doesn't care for a perspective that is not one that reflects the hegemony of a specific culture or country.
Absolutely.
It's very convenient sometimes, isn't it, to just hide behind these things and say, oh, but they do it, but it's still wrong.
Yeah, and it connects with what you said about critical thinking. I think a lot of the materials perpetuate this, even from big publishers. And then teachers also non-critically use this out of laziness and insecurity, and then, promote the sort of things that are useless for our students. First useless and then damaging.
Yes. And just recently, I went to one of the Cambridge days, and I just like to go to these kind of things to see what people are talking about, to look at the new textbooks that are coming out. And all I see is, the reflection of the inner circle countries, or the countries that are perceived to be the owners of the English language. So I see the UK flag, the Union Jack, the American flag, Canadian, New Zealand. Like, I see all these being represented, and then they'll put a tiny, like in a tiny corner, they'll put the country for which, like, they're trying to sell this resource or course book to. So it's like, yeah, we intended it for this little country over here. And how many flags could you actually include of English-speaking countries out there? And that would represent the variety of people studying English. As you don't find only Italians in an Italian school. You don't find, like, it's a mix. It's a mixture. It's very hard to have like a monolingual classroom anywhere in the world at this stage, I would say. Not Finland, apparently. Finland has the highest number of Finns studying in a monolingual kind of setting where everyone kind of looks alike and speaks alike and has the same background, because it's not a touristic destination where people end up staying at. No personalized, let's say, opinion there on Finland at all. I have still to visit it, so I have no idea. But I've read on this that actually they have this kind of an idealistic setting for teaching. So if you want to find like a monolingual classroom, maybe you should go to Finland and teach English from another monolingual perspective, if that's your case. But the thing is that you cannot find any classrooms that are not a mix of everything. So to deny that and to say, I'm going to be there, often as an English language teacher, you end up teaching in a class where your learners know 2 additional languages and you don't. And to have that the word that comes to mind is like pompous behavior, that you are actually going to teach them something that they don't know, and then they have to adapt to your style, and they are deficient or they are lacking something, and you are the one teaching. It just tells a lot about like the English language teacher's ego in general, and going on to teach like different subjects. Like, I speak English, so now I will teach maths in English. I will go into the CLIL, and I will now teach science in English because I speak. No, like, it does not work that way. It's actually the opposite. Like, someone who is a maths teacher will go on to learn English, learn it, maybe certify themselves and get a proficiency level, something that you teacher will not have. And then they will go into a classroom and they will teach that topic they're experts in an additional language they didn't previously know. And you will come there and say their accent is wrong. And that makes you the judge of like, who gave you the permission to even reinforce yourself and put yourself in a position to judge someone who has done much more than you have ever done. And this is just a little pointer when people start talking about proficiency, and how you ask them, you say, what proficiency level are you? And they'll blank out, as they normally do, and say, I never set a provision. I never had to. And you'll say, you never had to because you didn't want to, and it's because you're not required to. But I am required to, and so I have so and so. And they'll say, everyone gets a certification these days. And then you will say to them, go and get one yourself, and then we'll talk. Because it's not exclusive to non-native speakers. You can actually sit one and see where you get, what band score you get, or what level you get. Because I'm telling you, you will be surprised. You will be surprised.
Absolutely. I think
Am I coming across as very angry? Because I am. Oh my God, like, it's my daily reality. So I need to say this because people then are very intimidated to speak up about it. And I totally understand it.
Anger activates people.
Yes, it's a powerful sentiment.
But we come from a fairly homogeneous country, Croatia. It's changing now, but at least when I was doing practice in schools at university, it was monolingual, but you still have dialects. You still have people from different backgrounds. They still come to English from a different level and perspective, with different kind of cultural ideas in mind. So monolingual is a myth, I believe. We can't just level up and give everyone the same starting point in a classroom. It has to be a mix of some kind.
There is so much unacceptance, well said, around this topic. And I think that, I've been sharing a lot of things, like from the Graham Norton show now on IG, and you can see that there's a lot of like talk about accents, and I often show how native speakers often don't understand each other, for instance, because again, by the majority of the people who are not in an English-speaking context, it is perceived that a native speaker is actually an identity type, like you are this native. I don't know. Again, the critical thinking has not been pushed a lot to kind of question that other people can sound different, coming from even the same city, even the same country. And the same thing goes for English language teachers. Now, this is where I am a little bit like in awe and surprised and a little shocked when English language teachers supposedly are not aware of how, like, what is the journey of an accent? How do you develop an accent? Why does your accent change? Why in time? Maybe does it change because of where you are living? Is it something that happens locally? Is it because you have traveled? Is it because of the people you are speaking to? Like, there are a lot of factors. And that's why when I thought of the defeating systemic bias like course, I thought that was the first step people had to take in recognizing that people can sound different, and it's all because of a certain reason. There are reasons why we all sound different, and we need to kind of investigate and dig deeper and accept this before we can even move on to talk about acceptance in others. Because often this internalized thing, this is internalized native speakerism. You are judging yourself. You are judging someone for their foreign name. You are judging that someone for the countries they have visited. You are like, it can come in so many different forms, this discriminatory practice of looking at someone and then making these preconceived like beliefs that you have, because it is a belief that you hold. We are all conditioned by believing and kind of digging into stereotypes. And, it takes so much strength not to say something like, I'm an English teacher, but I'm from Armenia. Like this contrasting, language of but, or I speak English because I've lived in, like, people say that a lot, but isn't it true that there are people in places that English is not even a second or third language and they are fluent in it? Isn't it true that people within the same family can have different accents, even if they're living under the same roof? Isn't it? So why is this that, we are not talking about it more? And it's such a trending topic. As soon as I say accents, I get like, my views go up there because everyone wants to talk about it, and everyone can understand maybe their own regional varieties of accents, but they don't associate that the same thing applies to English. And then it doesn't apply to English in other ways, because English is not only seen as this language like, any other, like Armenian or like Filipino or like any other, variety, because it's not perceived as a global language like English is. And therefore, again, we have to treat English as a tool and not as a specific like language that we are looking up to XYZ countries to teach us that, because we've already, tying back to the topic of this conversation, English language is not something that is to be owned. Like the ownership of English, no one owns English. And this is something also that really rattles people who are English from an English speaking background. They really hate to say like, I'm sorry, it's not yours anymore. It's not. Maybe once it was, when the only people who were speaking English were, again, the colonizers. And so they were the only models of the English language people heard. But in today's globalized world, to talk about who owns the English language, I mean, that is what's outdated, not the dichotomy between native speaker and non-native speaker. That is what's outdated. So I guess the first step if I have to suggest, and I did a lot of talks until some of my the audience that was participating told me, can you break this down? Like, this is like too much. And that's when I thought, okay, accents. Let's talk about accentism, because that is what shuts people up a lot as teachers, because you like censor yourself from speaking, because as soon as you open your mouth, you are being judged because you sound different. And so I thought that would be like the first step that I wanted to kind of talk about before I moved on to anything else.
Maybe we can argue that AI owns English and all other languages now.
Well, it still doesn't, but you see, even AI perpetuates the fact that they speak native speaker English, and why? Because that's what's out there the most. So AI only learns from human error. And so whether or not, like, if you don't feed AI with the right resources and tools, it's going to spit back at you whatever has been perpetuated, and it's going to be even furthermore like racist and open about it, because it will have no filters. Even today, if you write on ChatGPT, like, what is the best way to learn English? If it's not my AI, because I have trained my own, tools to speak to me in an informed way, they are going to say, find a native speaker around you and practice with them. And you'll say, oh, talk about intelligence.
I can see yours saying, oh, well, the fact that you've asked that question tells me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, we have so many comments that it's hard to read them all. Thank you all for the comments. And as I can see, it's really quite a hot topic and interesting one to all the viewers. So, Meri, you seem to have struck a chord there.
I know. And I wanted to give a shout out to Kalaivani. I'm reading her comment right now because she's one of the trainers that's going to, I haven't met her yet. I've read her proposal, obviously, because she's going to deliver a CPD session for us sometime in, I can't remember, but it's probably in the third quarter of the year. And she says here, once an A-level student, can I read the comments since you guys are like fighting?
Yes, please.
An A-level student from Chile said, you are a great teacher and I like your teaching, but I want to learn from a native speaker and speak like a native. It is a pity that learners believe that they can simply start speaking like a native if they learn from a native. To this student, you can totally say, probably in their own language, that if they want to have this as a model, they don't need to pay for classes. They can turn on the television and just learn. Because that's what they're saying. They think that by listening enough to the right model, they will then replicate that because proximity to nativeness is what is there. So just say, do you have satellite TV? Do you have internet connection? There you go. You're done. You don't need to pay for a course.
The way I learned it mostly, so this is why my English is so poor, unfortunately.
It's not poor, Darko, because you are here hosting a friggin' podcast.
Yeah, but I have no idea about the grammar or anything. I'm just tapping in the dark somewhere.
What are you even saying? You see what I mean, Edita? This is what I mean. I've seen people who with so many qualifications, not to put the pressure now on Darko, that go into conferencing and before they start presenting whatever it is that they have to say, they say, "Excuse me for my accent. I'm a non-native speaker." At a conference, giving a presentation right before, like they've been accepted and all, and and this happened.
Yeah, but you understand that many people will not be able to understand it completely because of the accent.
I see that as a them problem. Like if you're a teacher of a language who is trained to understand any kind of variety coming out of your students' mouths, hopefully, yeah,
okay,
you have that skill of interpreting and mediating and things. How can you at that certain level not understand another teacher? Like, I don't know. Like, what are we talking about?
Okay, but I have the same problem with Croatian. I'm a bit speaking in dialect, and I understand that many can't understand all the words I'm saying.
Again, tying
so
back.
It's not only an English problem.
No, it's not. It's not only in English. That's what I was trying to say. Like in Parma, where I live, don't think about the ham. Don't think about the ham. Don't think about the ham. Now you're thinking about the ham, aren't you? Yes, you are. So what happens?
More about the cheese, but still.
Yeah, me too. So now I'm thinking about cheese. You see, you did it. So what happens is, going back to our serious conversation, is that when Parma has a specific dialect, which is influenced by the French. And so they have, it's really, really like a thick accent of, I don't know, you wouldn't understand it. Yeah, there's a lot of, but having lived here and not being, deaf to the things that I hear around me, I have started to like pick up on a lot of things, not start like almost immediately. And I think that is a skill that language teachers often have, and they have to have. And so I pick these up, and then my husband actually comes from another provincial town, and so I hear that a lot, and I can say things like, he can say 2 words that sound correct in Armenian because he's not a language teacher, obviously, but I can kind of replicate it. And yeah, sometimes I get it wrong, but my comprehension level is there because I have been exposed to it, and I also have been actively listening to it, trying to kind of use it as well, because I'm interested. It's part of his heritage. It's part of like our family. So I'm actually, so if I hear like, maybe if I hear other people talking it on the street, I will still get the gist of what they're saying. Even though I might not, and I'm not Italian, and I'm not from Parma, and I'm not from, so it's all about like the open-mindedness of this all. Having said that, I often mediate between the American and the English as well, because they would say something, what did you say? And in that case, there's like a communication breakdown overflow, because each of them will specifically want the other to accommodate their spoken standard. And they will not budge. I've seen this happen. Like, they will not adopt an expression, or like if making a stupid example here, if one says, get the cookie, can I have a cookie? What did you say? What did you like? Cookie? Like they would want to say biscuit, and the other, like it goes into a level of like what is happening. But sometimes really they don't get it, and I'm like, she means this, she means that, like, can you, and I often laugh about this, I'm like, can you please like get to your own, try and communicate. This is like you can't, you don't understand each other. They don't have also the cultural awareness sometimes of who they are talking to. I see like I don't want to go into puns or anything, but when a term you are using might be interpreted or not known by a specific group of people. Why would you use that term? To exclude? To make the person confused? I mean, it's totally okay if you're a random person on the street, but I think like English language teachers, they know better. And so when they do it, I know it's a power struggle that they like to, kind of take the upper hand, as to say. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, and I think that native speakers should also notice that maybe on CNN they don't see somebody from Tennessee represented, or in Croatia you don't hear all the dialects and accents on national television. So there's a reason for that, and it's not a nice one.
Yes, it's what the viewers prefer.
What else have we missed in the comments, Darko? I think there's a couple left.
We have some positive ones as well.
Quite a lot of them, actually. I see Peter has managed to get his LinkedIn settings right, so great, Peter.
Thank you.
Wilson commented to Alexandra that her passport is not a problem. So we shouldn't be looking at passports when teaching other languages. Okay, Edita from Said, maybe you could read one.
This one.
Yep.
Okay, I know. Oh, we don't need it twice. I know Iranian teachers who are now working as English literature teachers in the UK school system, and yet those same teachers will face closed doors in Middle East and mentioned by Meri, Southeast Asia.
That is true. That is true, because again, they will look at your passport, they will look at your name, they will look at anything that can exclude you from that, and hire the person who has the right name and the right, quote unquote. And that's the reality. And how can I not speak about certifications at this stage? When if someone who who has gone through a 4-week course, as good, well-structured course as you might actually think it is, if someone who has that and we use the term qualified for that person, and I know a lot of these people are watching, I don't want to say it's not a good thing that you've taken this course and it shows that you are dedicated and you're starting your career as English language teachers, etc. And that's great. Everyone starts off somewhere, but that is what it is. It's a starting point. To then fall into this kind of perception of yourself as you have arrived, as like you are English and you have this certification and now everything is done, couldn't be further away from the truth. But it's harder to accept this truth when everything around you and everyone around you says you are qualified. Indeed. And then there are people with over 5,000, 10,000 hours of actual university knowledge and skill. And you say, oh, yeah, everyone now gets it. Go and get it. If it's so easy, don't say, just go and get it. And then we'll talk about your 4-week course. And that person also falls under the category of qualified. Sometimes he doesn't, because they will say you're qualified. You have the titles, but you are not habilitated. You don't have the in Italian it's called abilitazione. There isn't one specific term, right, that I can think of, but like it's like a qualified teacher status kind of thing that you can actually go and teach. They'll say you have the titles, but that's all you have. Whereas to an English language expert who is also English, you're qualified. Everything has been done, like with a 4-week course. So this kind of disparity is what is ruining education and English language for all. And that's why I often like have a bone to pick with, for example, Cambridge, who I have always seen as the go-to kind of name and basically institution that could form me as an English language teacher, because I say, why did I have to sit, and I call it a student proficiency test, because when I did my Delta, I did the 3-part with the first module, second module, third module, and the first module itself alone was a 3-hour test divided into an hour and a half and an hour and a half, where I had to do all these crazy things I didn't know anything about before studying for the Delta. And I have an MA in English language culture and like all that. And I still had to learn a lot. I said that as passed that test, passed the second module, which was hands-on practice, passed the third one, which was an extensive written, like you had to choose a specific category. If you're not familiar with the Delta, go and then write something about it, like it's experimental. And I did it on exam classes and things like that. And when I finished all of that, people said, what level are you? At what level do you speak English? And I said, well, I'm an English language teacher. So I don't, and they actually said, that's not well, it's not. In fact, it isn't. It's not a proficiency level test. It's a teaching course, right? That you sit and take, and it's an exam. And so I'm like, why would Cambridge then allow someone with a Delta sit an English proficiency test sponsored by Cambridge and pretend that I'm not a teacher who has just spent thousands of euro on their freaking teacher course, right? I don't see that. So, okay, if it's the proficiency thing, I took it. And I did another one as well. And it was like, so yes, someone commented here, ESL is business. Yes, it is a business. And therefore we have to treat it as such, but we are not a business. Are you a business? I mean, you are an individual who is suffering from this being a $1 billion industry, a €1 billion industry, right? So why don't we just like dot our I's and cross our T's and demand respect and demand, like, I am happy to invest in myself and my education and further my career. But if it's going to serve someone with the right passport and not me specifically, then I'm not okay with it. So I am not ever going to invest in anything with that label anymore, because first they have to show me that they care about me as much as I cared for my students, as much as I cared for my career. And then we'll have another conversation then to see if they have gotten their esteem back. Because, you know, I'm glad for anyone who is getting their papers together and their acts together and forming and getting formal qualifications. But then who is it serving exactly? Because if we're going to see, and everyone says, oh, if everything being equal, everything is never equal. Let's just stop there. Everything is never equal. No two things are equal. So everything can't be equal.
There's a little certificate holder in my head clapping. Maybe we should ask for a refund.
They will be like barred. Or like even in these courses, right? I would say, why don't you just speak about this dichotomy? Why don't you say, for honesty, that it will give you, possibilities and open doors, but it depends. It depends on what passport. Or sell it and then say it, because it takes years and years for people to actually understand that their name or anything that we've discussed today is going to actually hinder their progress and their career, basically, because they will always be perceived as, no matter what you have. there you're always going to, and then you can think about it like, oh, your ego will be repaid for this. And again, I'm the first one to, I really thought I was that naive that by qualifying myself in this and that and this and that and this and that, people were going to ignore that I come from Armenia. It never happened. People ignored in so many different ways the wrong things. Like they ignored I was Armenian. They thought I was Italian. They were like, it was always like a misinterpretation of everything, and it was always like something was missing. But it was always a discriminatory factor, where whatever it is. I was never perceived English as an English person. I was sometimes perceived as an American, and I know for a fact that my accent is a mixture, so I cannot be perceived as one or the other. So it's just, we need to educate the uneducated, and also by doing that, we also have to take the throne away from people who are now dictating the industry, basically, who think that they are the owners.
I think it's quite important for the people watching to tap themselves and say, you're enough, because I as well got a master's degree in education and then a CELTA that taught me nothing new. That was way more expensive than my qualifications that I got in Croatia. And it's a problem.
It is to see your own formed, like in the same institution, under the same name, to form a teacher and then require them to sit a proficiency test and say, this is not for a learn, this is to a test. What are you saying? So I can be a teacher and not be an advanced level speaker. What are you saying? So I'm not really so if I teach, am I not like at a higher level than a student? You know exactly how hard the tasks that you have assigned are. It's nowhere near something like, can you comprehend this question? Like it's in-depth analysis of every term, of every phrase, of every paragraph, of everything. And you're telling me I have to prove to you that I'm actually, after all, like, come on. Don't tell me they have never thought about this, but they said, there's more money to be made. And I say there's more money to be made by getting native speakers to get that proficiency test. I think there's more money there. There isn't actually more money because it's a minority. You see, non-native speakers are the majority. And there is more money to be made there. But if you want to make even more money, in addition to what you're forcing non-native speakers to do, here it is. I'm no consultant or financial advisor, but I think you could make at least 300 million more by getting native speakers to certify themselves, just in the UK.
Yeah, I recommend the experience of getting the C2 certificate.
Then you might be able to see other people's, qualification as enough once you've taken it yourself and gotten a worse score.
Yeah, and you also know what your students go through and the kind of added pressure of going through it as a teacher.
They will still not know because they will be doing it in their own language. They still won't know.
That's a good point. All right, where are we with the comments? There's so many incoming. Thank you, guys. You've been really amazing today.
You have.
Let me see.
True. Time to train the ears to understand global accents rather than forcing your mouth to adapt to a foreign accent. Absolutely. Said says, when they were going around colonizing everyone, they gave us the privilege of owning their language or telling people to go back to where they came from. I like this feisty attitude. They also should consider experience and skills. Yes, Alexandra, they often hide behind experience because teachers who have been in the program for 40 years without owning one formal piece of paper are now leveraging their years of experience, and experience is only valid when you have actually done something with that time and gotten an education, for instance, right? So be careful when we talk about like experience, because often behind that experience, there is literally nothing. It's literally the same old for years and years and years to come. And the attitude of you should learn from me because I've been doing this for a long time. You've been doing what's wrong for a long time. I agree. Natives often ask non-natives about grammar structures and forms, for instance. That is also true. But so the non-native speakers look up to native speakers and say, how is that pronounced? Am I saying this right? So let's just stop there for a second and say this. If you are an English language teacher, you should be both. Like you should be able to do both. Teach grammar, know grammatical structures, how they are formed and everything, know the features of discourse and all of that. And also you should know how to hold a conversation and do conversation classes, something that native speakers love to do. It comes with being an English language teacher. There is no qualification that says you're only going to learn the grammar structures because you're going to teach grammar. And that's that. It's the 4 skills and the 4 systems, and that's what it is. So this I am good at, or non-natives are good with grammar, but they're not good with conversation. Let's just never say that again, because that's not true. That's another thing of like perpetuating it on the other. Native speakers don't know that. Well, if they've studied to become teachers, they do know, or they should know. Then how they do their work, I don't know, but they should. I'm all about for collaboration. That is the way to work in peace. Totally. Yes. But it's not like I'm going to compensate their lack of knowledge of grammar, and not that they're going to compensate because I can't speak in English. Like this is the disparity with which we're talking about. Obviously, no single person in anything cannot attest to, like if you go to a history teacher, that history teacher is not going to be able to impart their knowledge on you in the one way that is going to be comprehensive of everything, is it? They're going to have their own views, their own perspectives, their own identities, and it's all going to flow into what they're teaching and how they're teaching it. The same with language teachers. So if you really want to know something inside out, you're going to have to turn to many experts and not just one. It may be I wouldn't look at who is a native and who's a non-native. I would be looking at the expertise of the person and not the experience again, and going to touch it and going to like slowly realizing what it is that I'm lacking that I can then build on. And that's how English language teaching also should be seen. Like you cannot have one specific teacher for your entire life and claim that you're learning from the best. There is no such thing as a better or best teacher. It's not. There may be the perfect teacher for you in that time. It may be a limited time, it may be a longer time, but it's not about the perfection. You don't get that anywhere. Even my tutors, the people that I looked up to, they have their own limitations. We are human. We can't, do everything ourselves. And that therefore collaboration and the collectivity of it all is what really serves everyone, generally speaking. Are we out of time? Can I talk about my DSB?
We were just waiting for that.
Okay. The defeating systemic bias. This is what I have thought of, thanks to the people who had participated to these live events that were free to get into and to learn these things that we're talking about today. So the first, it's like a 3-part masterclass series, right? 3-part. It's under 2 hours and 40 minutes, something like that. So it's under 3 hours, I can safely say, where it goes deeper. We go deeper into what is accentism, how accents are developed over time. So if you are an English language teacher and you're still doubting this and you're in your head a lot, you're like, yeah, Meri, all this, but you sound the way you do, and I sound. If you think that, you have to take this masterclass, and I assure you, it will change the way you think about yourself first, and therefore then you can go to the next module, which is learning about the approaches and the methodologies across a century, basically. I say through the decades, where we dismantle and we look at the historical context for every methodology, why it was there, what it is saying, what lies behind it, why we are even today implementing very outdated methodologies because we don't understand the approach equals belief of how English language is learned. And therefore, sometimes we might be ancient in our teaching methodology without even realizing that it is tainted with very old mechanisms and old beliefs. So that's the second model. And the third one is how to teach global pronunciation. And I've only chosen pronunciation because I think that it's very connected with accents. And a lot of non-native English speaking teachers do not do pronunciation because they are told that they don't say things correctly or that they cannot pronounce it in the right way. So they feel that they are not allowed to represent themselves in, layman's terms. So you really have to kind of look at some. I give you like 15 pronunciation activities for primary, secondary, and adult learners. There's also a freebie I give away. So if you want to get in touch, I will send you the link to it so you can see what they actually look like. And it's like a Trojan horse kind of activity because you can do it tomorrow in whichever class or even individual one-to-one settings. And you teach them about what we're talking about today within the lesson. So all these activities, a bit less with the primary levels, but this is where they're going towards. This is about acceptance and global English pronunciation, etc. It's not accent friendly. I mean, you can keep your accent and still learn about and still teach pronunciation. So that's totally fine. And yeah, those are the three parts of this bigger picture. And there are like sometimes there are live events and things like that I reserve only for my Defeating Systemic Bias community, where we keep in touch and we talk about all things important. And if you enjoyed this, get inside and see for yourself. There's a lot to unpack and unlearn.
I can recommend it firsthand. I'm going to add the link here and to YouTube because we're streaming to YouTube as well. Even though a lot of people don't know it, you can watch us there too. So Meri, your video will be on YouTube for sharing as well.
Excellent.
And I want to thank you for making that resource. And it's quite affordable in price as well, unlike these long Cambridge certificates.
And if you're just starting your journey like a CELTER, I think you'll get so much more in terms of like a lot of the things are really unpacked and put in order and very nicely. Like there are PDFs that go with each of the sessions, so you can simply download, print them even. And it really like serves as, you had a lot of lesson plans. There's a lot of additional material. And the reason I kept the price low is that I wanted to serve a global audience. So I know that people in a different part of the world, like it sounds like it's very cheap for us, but it's not cheap for other people just entering the field and maybe working in a place where they are being paid less. Let's put it this way. So I want to keep it that. I know that urgency often sells, but I don't want to urge people to go into a bigger investment for them, because I really tried not to say cheap or expensive anymore, because it's all a matter of perspective.
And for native-speaking English countries, it's not interested at all. Anyway.
No, actually, I have two.
No.
Native speakers. I have two native speakers in the course, and they want, and they told me the reason why. One of them is like my ally in this fight, and she got this resource and a lot of things that, because she's also learning and being passionate about it, and she's unlearning a lot of things. She owns a school as well, and so she wants to know how to speak to the client preference kind of thing. And the other one, for instance, thinks that when she teaches pronunciation, it kind of sounds cringy from her own perspective. And so she wanted to learn how to teach pronunciation in a way that would respect her students' voices. So it's not, I haven't excluded native speakers from this resource, because I think they need to question themselves as well and see how exactly what they're doing in the class reflects their students' identities in general. So it's for everyone.
Okay, great to know. So you don't have to have such exercises like marbles in your mouth to have this royal pronunciation and everything.
No way. No way.
No way.
That's about ancient ways of doing things, yeah?
Yeah, that was always shown in the movies like this. So to have a really royal accent, you need to work on this way.
It actually came. I studied Latin when I was in secondary school in Italy, and there was I was very bad at Latin, by the way, but there was someone like a historical figure that was that couldn't talk or stuttered or something, and they did that. They put real actual stones and went to practice and then got rid of that. There's I probably the audience is much more informed. I'm terrible at referencing, but it comes from actually like ancient historical times, this, and probably readapted to current times with marbles. But it's actually an older tale there. Who knows if it's true or not, but some Latin author.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Mary, for all the advice and knowledge you talked about here today. I don't know if Edita has gone completely or she's just the one big E in the circle.
I'm here.
Oh, you're
My
still
camera
here.
just decided that after an hour, she's tired of me and everything, so she just blanked out. But I'm here listening.
Has been acting up. Anyway, I can't believe we did this at it was very early for me. So I'm glad that I was able to process my own thoughts and to get my ideas across. Hopefully I didn't confuse or hurt too many feelings here.
No. There are really many people just commenting and encouraging you in what you said. So I don't think you hurt anyone.
I'll keep you posted on that, Darko. They're coming for me.
Oh.
They always
The
do.
dark forces from somewhere from the shadows.
Yes, I will be expecting them at my next live event. Thank you, Meri, for your support and positive energy. Thank you, Alexandra, for contributing to this talk. It was really, really important. And thank you for all the validation. I totally appreciate it. Peter, thank you so much for being here and for always interacting with my stuff.
Okay.
Thank you, Meri, especially for an early collaboration. You were at the usual energy, so I don't see any difference.
It's the coffee talking. It's the coffee. But yeah, I hope to connect with everyone also in other spaces, in other places. And yeah, if you have any questions or you want to reach out to me, I'm always here.
And we'll be protecting you and supporting you, of course.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that's it for today. Bye to you.